My name's Marty Hartman. I'm currently the executive director of Mary's Place. I started with Mary's Place back in 1999 as I was hired to start a day center called Mary's Place. And it's been quite a journey. I ran the day center for about 12 years and then went into more of a leadership capacity for Mary's Place. And I've been doing that work for an additional 12 years here at Mary's Place. So yeah, that's how I got started because I was working at my church and not working, but volunteering at my church. And they had a shelter for women that had been struggling, and so they ended up closing it. And then I had a conversation with the group that was running it and asked if they thought we could do things differently or how we could do things better. And so through that conversation, we reopened that shelter for 10 women that spent the night at the church. And through that conversation, through the women that I met there over the next 3 or 4 years, I learned about the Church of Mary Magdalene, and they were hiring a position for what they wanted to start was a day center that they wanted to call Mary's Place. So that's how I got connected. I got a referral for that job, and then was interviewed by a lot of the women that used the place. I remember that as my
Mhm.
first interview of the women that had been going there doing crafts and worship. And so then I was hired for that job. And yeah, it was such a great decision. I originally went into it thinking, oh, I'll stay here a year and then turn it over to make sure that, there's folks who have been experiencing homelessness can take it over and then just run it and keep it going. But it kind of gets, this was, you found your home there, right? You found a sense of
Mhm.
community and belonging too. So yeah, that's how it happened.
Great. I know this question's probably gonna be hard for you, so if you have a couple, it's fine. But do you have a favorite memory, of Mary's Place, like an interaction or experience that really stands out to you among the rest? You probably have so many.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my head just gets flooded with them, right? Um, I just have visions of washing feet and putting bag balm as a great lotion on the bottom of especially Kim Peterson's feet, and how we did that so often. And she would come in with tar on her feet, had been walking barefooted, and it was the best opportunity. She became really near and dear to my heart. And through those conversations, learned so much about each other, and just listen to her needs. And just we would laugh and giggle, and we'd tickle her feet. But then, and other times her feet hurt so bad, and we put that bag balm on and cake it on really heavy and give her a brand new pair of socks. And then it was amazing how transformative that was on her feet. And we'd always be like, they're just like a baby's bottom. So I mean, it was just a sweet, sweet memory. But it's more the relationship and the connection that provided.
Mhm.
And so that just transferred to a lot of women doing that same type of practice in those early days when we just opened the doors to Mary's Place.
Mhm. Mhm. What impact did you see Mary's Place having over your entire time there in the general community in Seattle?
I think impact for the community is it was really solving to a deep crisis of the need for folks,
Mhm.
especially single women, and then later on, 10 years later, families, to have a place of belonging and a sense of community, and a place where you could build
Mhm.
relationship and connection and find resources, but really find a family if you were looking for that, like a place where you knew like those are your people, right? And
Mhm.
I think that was pretty. I think that continues today, right? Like just a refuge.
Mhm. 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 And over your time there, how have you seen Mary's Place change and grow? I know that it's gone through a lot of both change and growth, but I guess from your perspective, how have you been seeing that?
Um, yeah, I would say we were a really good kept secret for, that first 10 years. And it was just this predominantly a women's day center. We had to move a couple times because we lost our locations and our, you know, our shelter, and we just worked together with a small group of people sometimes. And we had an amazing board member and board chair, JJ McKay, that really stewarded and brought in a ton of relationships and made a lot of connections for us. And that was
Mhm,
transformative. It
mhm,
was huge opportunity to um, share and advocate in ways that we had never done before. So those changes allowed us and afforded us new opportunities. And as the crisis for children sleeping outside started, because that first 10 years, really, we really never saw children outside. But when we families started coming at a rapid rate during the recession back in about 2009, 2010, um, when we saw that need, it was all those relationships that he had helped connect us to that really transformed our our organization in being able to meet the need and rise up to the level of crisis outside to provide that same support we had provided for women, for families, and then extend that to overnight stays, which was something very new to us because we had just been a day center.
mhm. So, can you think of one event, or if you can't think of one, maybe a time period or a series of events that you think is particularly important to the history of the organization?
I think the evolution of the organization, right? Starting
Mhm,
at a church with a very deep grassroots effort to reach out to women and hear what their needs were and
mhm,
really develop something that met their needs. And I think that's what Reverend Jean Kim did, right? So well.
mhm,
She knew they needed a sense that they had told her, they wanted a sense of belonging. I mean, they told her they wanted bras, right? Like an underwear, and to restore dignity and personhood, that they wanted to
mhm,
be heard and not just swept away or walked on or walked over, and that they wanted to be recognized and valued for who they were as people, but yet have a sense of belonging and community and a place where they could go no matter if things were good or if things were not so good, that they could show up and be loved and respected and known, right? And called by name. So I
mhm,
think that was this great foundation that she built. And over the shift and over time, I think as we saw that with the when the recession hit and families started coming, it was being able to take that same foundation and build that um, with those same needs that she had presented, and how she solved that crisis by asking our community to step up and support. And although with Jean, Reverend Jean, it was more the faith community she relied on heavily. Um, but it was that deep sense of you have to ask, right? And if you don't ask,
mhm,
you don't get. So, but
mhm,
taking all of those lessons learned and the foundation she built and transferring and growing that to scale to meet the need for families is really, I think, the evolution of the agency, because it wasn't, you know, 2010 we started with, what we knew, right? Our faith community opening family shelters,
mhm,
um, and just moving from week to week, from church to church, and volunteers helping and supporting. And then as we continued to advocate to share the need, uh, then it was opportunities for buildings where during that recession when downtown was pretty empty, right? People had closed
mhm,
down buildings and their shops, and then that was another part of the evolution, was finding a building that we and this is where your grandma was incredibly helpful and just so passionate about, was taking buildings that were slated for demolition and then
mhm,
raising the funding to be able to make sure that we could kind of make them sparkle and shine like like a home for now, and we use those buildings just for a short period of time, right? Sometimes it was 2 years, sometimes it ended up being like 10 years on that first building we worked on with your grandma. But it was those buildings and that process that really transformed who we were because it allowed us to get into communities. Like 26 times we did that. We took different buildings and
Mhm.
called them home for now. And it was as we went into each community and to each neighborhood, we built new relationships and new partnerships. And so that created more of an
Mhm.
advocacy and elevated the voice and the need and the crisis in the community and allowed other people to respond as we went from community to community. So I think some of those periods uh, of evolution that happened, and I'd say was right about 2010, and that's where your grandma was really instrumental too, was helping us change you know, uh, our, I would say our fiscal process, but really we integrated as Mary's Place, right? We incorporated as Mary's Place,
Mhm.
filed our own 501(c)(3) so we could expand the funding services and resources that we were able to get as a separate 501(c)(3) and not based on the church relationships or the faith community, not just solely based on that, but spreading that. And
Mhm.
so that really, I will say, was definitely transformative. And then that's how, as we
Mhm.
were reaching out, gathering more support, we got more corporate support. And that started to happen in about 2015.
Mhm. So as the director, when you talk about these changes that you went through and the organization went through, especially ones where you're going through big changes, like from moving to from single women to also families, how do you, I guess, decide to make those transitions? Is it just listening to the guests and responding to the needs? How do those discussions go? How are those decisions, I guess, made?
Yeah, I will say, it's always done in partnership, right? You hear that
Mhm.
for the first, 15 years, it was all, coming through the guests, like what their needs were, what we
Mhm.
were seeing, what what services we were lacking in, right? And how do
Mhm.
we respond to that and what would that look like? And so really hearing from our guests and then working together with our staff, our board, and our community. We were much smaller back then, right? And then making it happen, right? Like how do we bring this
Mhm.
about? How do these things work? And making sure that we are continually assessing and reassessing what we needed to do and if this is the direction we needed to go. And then I think as it grew in scale, things get bigger, a little more complex. So it is multiple layers with different teams involved and engaged and layers of leadership and still that board component of. So I think as things shifted and changed, sometimes it takes a little more time uh, and to bring everybody else along in the process. So that, but it's still that's continued to be that process. It's intentional, it's thoughtful, it's based on client need,
Mhm.
and it's always based on the community's goodwill and support to make it happen.
Mhm. Mhm. And just finally, I know that this is a history project, but when you think about the future of Mary's Place and the future of the organization, what do you want to see the organization become and grow into, and what do you want that future to look like?
Oh, I think for us is that, for me, it's just that no child will sleep outside and that
Mhm.
everyone is someone's child. So those women at our
Mhm.
center will all be inside and housed just as much as every family that's come through our doors. So to me, that's the vision, right? That Mary's Place would be put out of business because we wouldn't be needed. I hope I
Mhm.
hope maybe it would just turn into a community center where all of
Mhm.
the guests that have been here through the past come back and volunteer and see each other and have parties and dinners and events together and reminisce and just share love for each other and other resources that folks need and um, a place to come when they're feeling low and when life is really, really hard and tough and through challenges, and you can still count on finding that love, that support, that relationship, that connection. that will help carry you through because it's been there for you in the past and it'll be there for you in the future if you need it.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, thank you so much for taking some of your time today and talking with me about Mary's Place. I've really enjoyed it. I don't have any more like official questions, but if there's anything that you want to add to this project, any memories or stories or insights that you want to add to this interview, feel free. But yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Gosh, Colette, thanks for everything. We sure appreciate you. Enjoy.